Hi, my name is Miriam, and this is the Black TV Show podcast. This is where I talk about my favorite TV show episodes, currently talking about season 2 of The Cosby Show. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 37, The Cosby Show season 2, episode 14, Vanessa's Bad Grade. This episode aired January 16, 1986. So I looked up the synopsis for this episode, which I usually don't do on most podcast episodes, but I had to read it because when you first watch the episode, you're like, okay, what's the point of the episode? And then when you read the synopsis, it makes Vanessa steals a sweater from Denise. The two soon began to fight. In the end, Rudy's choice of television viewing, the I Have a Dream speech, reminds the whole family of what a real problem is. So we're going to go into the episode, and we start with Rudy is blowing bubbles in her milk. So it's the morning time, and she's in the kitchen, and Claire comes in and says, stop blowing bubbles with her straw. So then what she does is she takes the straw out of the milk, she puts it into her bowl and blows out the milk in there. And finally, Claire was like, stop, you gotta go now, brush your teeth and get ready for school. So Cliff is coming down, and Rudy tells Cliff, don't play with your straw. And he's like, what? Like he's just out of it. So he's really tired, you can tell. And Claire asks like how he's doing, and he just doesn't want to talk about it. And Claire was like, oh, I feel bad for you. This is now the third day this week you've been working late. And Cliff says, I think little babies want to be born between the hours of 2 to 5 a.m. While there's a blizzard and the temperature is 73 below zero. And every time he delivers a baby, the baby comes out and points at him with a smile. Oh, and the way he says it like that towards the camera, he like points at the camera and smiles at it, making it feel like it broke the fourth wall in terms of the episode. And so Claire says they should forget going to the movies today because he's really tired and he's just going to fall asleep. And he's like, no, let's go. And she was like, no, when the lights are out, you're out. So maybe let's go Friday night. And so Cliff looks at the paper and he looks at it and says, oh, okay, well, the forecast says no babies, so we're good for Friday. And so Vanessa comes down. And she asks if she can go shopping for a new sweater. Claire says, no, you already got a bunch of new sweaters for Christmas. And I said this episode aired January 16. We're only like two or 3 weeks after Christmas. So yeah, like why does she need a new sweater now? And Vanessa says, because Robert has seen all of her sweaters. So I realized that we skipped the Halloween episode, which is actually the first episode that we meet Robert. Robert is now, I believe, her boyfriend. I believe that's the case. And so Robert has seen all of her sweaters. And Cliff says, like, why don't you wear them inside out? Yeah, no, it probably won't look good. It's not fashionable, you know? So Robert's taking her to the school dance, and she really wants a new sweater. And she knows exactly what she wants. She wants the exact same sweater that Denise has. And Claire was like, well, then why don't you just ask Denise if you can borrow hers? And Vanessa says, well, Denise is not going to let me borrow her sweater. It's not going to happen. And Claire says, well, how do you know that? Why don't you give it a try? You know, ask her. And she's like, okay, I'll go ask. And so Cliff was like, you know, do you want to make a bet on this? Because he knows that Denise is not going to let Vanessa have her sweater. It's not going to happen. And Claire was like, you know, Denise went through the same situation with Sandra. She might be more understanding. And Cliff was like, okay, let's bet on it. Let's bet on it. Big box of popcorn at the movie, and like a large jumbo box. And Claire was like, okay, let's take the bet. And right away we hear Denise says, are you kidding? No. And Cliff starts laughing because he knows he won the bet. And Denise says she hasn't like even worn the sweater. It's like brand new. And Vanessa was like, well, if you wear it today, it will be worn. And of course, Denise and Vanessa are leaving to go to school, and Denise is saying no. Cliff looks at Claire saying, I would like my popcorn with butter with no salt. And so it's later in the day, and Cliff is taking a nap. So this is after school, and Theo comes in and slams the door so loud, and Cliff is literally on the couch napping. And Cliff doesn't really wake up. You can see his eyes open, but he doesn't wake up. And so Theo goes back to the door. And I didn't understand this because the door is now closed. So why do you want to go back and open the door and close it again and make more noise? Like, just leave it. You made a mistake. It's okay. But you know that next time don't slam the door, you know? So he ends up opening and then slowly closing it. And so then he starts walking like he's cool to go into the kitchen. And all of a sudden, Cliff grabs his leg and says, "You slammed the door." And Theo was like, "Well, I had no idea you were sleeping." And Theo was like, "I wanted to make sure that the door was closed." And Cliff was like, "Yeah, but you're confusing it from, just closing the door to sealing it. It's not necessary to do that. You need to ease your way into closing the door." And so we cut to the kitchen, where we see Vanessa and Robert, holding hands, gazing into each other's hands, all their books open as if they're studying, but they're not really studying. And Vanessa's like, I wish we had all of our classes together. Robert's like, yeah. And all of a sudden, Theo walks in, and both of them, let go of their hands, and looked at their books, focus. And Theo makes a whole bunch of noise because he's just trying to get juice, I think. Like, he's trying to get a drink. And Vanessa was like, "Can you stop making all that noise?" And Theo was like, "Sorry, I'm just trying to get a drink." And he leaves for a sec. And then Vanessa and Robert start talking again, holding hands, talking about who's playing at the dance. I guess the band that's playing at the dance is the Spikes, and Robert loves the Spikes because they play the saxophone. And then Vanessa was trying to ask who's decorating the dance, and all of a sudden Theo comes back in and asks, "Oh, what are you guys studying?" And Vanessa says, "The war on 1912." And Robert corrects her and says, No. The war on 1812. So I don't recall learning about this war because I don't think it involved Canada, because the majority of this history that I was learning was about Canadian history. The only time that I would know about American history is if it's connected to the Canadian history. So I looked this up. So the War of 1812, it was from June 18, 1812 to February 17, 1815. The conflict fought between the United States and the Great Britain over the British violations of the U.S. maritime rights. It ended up exchanging a ratification of the Treaty of Gunnet, known as the Second American War of Independence. So that's the little bit of it. But Theo was like, "Oh, I don't want to bother you. I know a lot of things have happened in the war." So whatever I just told you is not the details of the war, according to Theo, basically saying that there was a lot that happened. But that's a little, summary about the war. And Theo says, "Just give me a minute. I'm just gonna get a drink and I'll be leaving." And so Denise comes into the kitchen and she says, "Do not go into the living room. I woke up Dad by accident and he is really cranky." And Denise goes towards the phone and Vanessa's like, "Excuse me, we're studying." And Denise says, I told Monica I was gonna call her." And Vanessa was like, "You can use the phone upstairs." And Denise was like, "I'm already here." And Theo points out, he's like, "Do you know about the War of 1912? He said the wrong one. It's supposed to be 1812, but he said 19. I had to go back and be like, did he say 1912? Because I thought we were talking about the 1812 war. And so then Denise says they can take a break. And Vanessa was like, "This is a really big history test. We cannot take a break from studying." And Denise is like, "Come on." And Vanessa was like, "We can consider taking a break if you give me that sweater for the dance." And Denise was like, "I'm not lending you my sweater. If I lend you something that belongs to me, then that's belongs to everyone else." I didn't understand that statement, but that's what she said. And the phone rings, and Theo picks up the phone. And guess who it is? It's Janet Miser, Vanessa's friend. And she wants to talk to Vanessa, and Vanessa was like, I can take the phone call. Denise was like, "I thought you can't take a break." And Vanessa was like, "Well, the phone is for me." And Denise tells Theo, don't give her the phone. And Vanessa's like, give me the phone. And he's like stuck in the middle. He's like, I just want to get out of this situation. And finally he puts the phone on the fridge, and Vanessa gets the phone before Denise and starts talking to Janet about their outfits. Apparently one of her friends is wearing a a red skirt, and that was what Vanessa was going to wear. So now it's going to look like they're copying each other. So she's not happy about it. And while there's this phone call is happening, Denise says to Theo, thanks a lot for giving the phone to her. Like, because she was supposed to talk to Monica, you know? And so Theo asked Robert, do you have any sisters? And he was like, no. And Theo was like, go home tonight and thank your parents. And Robert tries to go for a handshake with, or like a high five with Theo, and Theo's like, what the heck? And he like walks away. And so we're in the living room. And this is it looks like this is Friday. We've moved on to another day. And we're in the living room, and there is 2 dolls and a bear sitting on the couch. And the TV is on, but no one there. And it's an exercising show, or I'm assuming a show, yeah. I was going to say, is it an exercising DVD? But I don't think there was DVDs in 1986. It could be a VHS, probably. And so Cliff walks in, and the person on the TV is like, the exercise for the cool people. And he says, we are all the people that believe you don't need pain to get gain. Just be cool about it. And Rudy walks into the living room, and Cliff says, are those on the couch your friends? And she's like, yeah, they wanted to watch TV. And Cliff says, are they trying to get into shape? And she was like, yeah. And Cliff was like, I don't think they're into it as much. Maybe you should take them upstairs and read to them. And she's like, okay. And so she takes them upstairs. And Cliff is about to change the channel, but instead he's getting into the video, and he puts his hands up in the air when they say put your hands up, and then they say to bend his knees and then touch his toes. And the guy was like, it's cool if you don't want to keep your legs straight. Yeah, because when you're trying to stretch out your body, you're supposed to have, or stretch out, I guess, your leg, you're supposed to with your hands touching your toes, your legs have to be straight, like your knee needs to be straight. But as you see in this episode, he's literally just sitting on the couch, bent knee, so it's not the right way. And the TV says, if you don't attack your heart will attack you. And so he turns off the TV, and Claire comes in, and Cliff was like, oh, I'm ready for the movie. And Claire says, and you're not too tired? And he's like, no, I had plenty of sleep. I just finished my exercise. And I'm like, what you just did was not exercise, dude. Okay, it's not. And so Claire says, this is going to be a wonderful movie. Her coworker Carla told her that it won many awards in Europe. And Cliff was like, I'm not interested about the awards. I'm more interested about the popcorn that he's going to get from Claire, who is going to end up buying it. And Cliff says to Claire, you can't be cheap. You got to get me a tub. Like, you got to get the tubs that you just climb in. You climb in to eat your way out. I've never seen those. Can you buy something like that? That I've seen people like have a huge box of whatever, and you could climb into it, but I don't think they sell that at the movie theaters. We cut to being in Vanessa's room, and she wants to talk to Theo. And Theo comes in and says, like, what's wrong? And so she gives her history test to him because she received it back. She got a D. And you know, in the Huxtable house, no child gets a D. That is a sign of not being successful, basically. And Vanessa says, like, I've never gotten a D. And Theo was like, it's even in red, which is the worst. I thought when they mark things, like when I got things marked, they usually use red pen. I didn't know that they do it in different colors. And she doesn't know like what happened. Like Vanessa says that she studied very hard with Robert. And like Theo was like, yeah, I saw. And Vanessa asks, like, what should I do? Should I tell the parents now, or should I tell them later? And Theo was like, sooner the better. And Vanessa was like, well, then if I tell them now, they might not let me go to the dance. And Theo says, there might be a chance that they will never ever dance again, which is not true. Well, she'll be able to. Vanessa says that they're probably not going to get mad because I always get A's all the time. This is the 1D. And Theo says, our parents don't think of no little D's. And he wishes her good luck with the situation that she's in. And it's nighttime, and Vanessa is trying out all her sweaters. And she's asking Rudy for her opinion, and Rudy was like, they're all nice. I love it. And one of her outfits that she has, if you remember from the first day of school episode, she was wearing a yellow with black, I don't know what animal it was, but it was like little black dots of animals with being yellow. And those were one of the outfits that she was trying to try out. And I'm like, I love seeing that they were repeating an outfit. And this is the same thing with the Princeton shirt that Rudy got from Sandra, how we saw it in 2 different episodes. I like that because, like, I feel like when I see shows nowadays, you never see them wear the same clothes again. But in real life, we all wear, like, the same clothes. Like, for me, I swear, I wear leggings like 7 days a week. I wear the same sweater all week long. So I don't change outfits all the time. But like when I see shows nowadays, like I was thinking to myself, like Grownish, I swear they're wearing different outfits in every episode. And I'm like, how big is your closet, like, to have that many outfits? So I liked how they showed repetitive outfits for this show. And so Rudy, of course she says, like, it looks good. And, Vanessa's like, you're saying that about everything. And she's like, well, they all look good, And so Rudy goes to the desk and sees that Vanessa's paper and asks, like, why is there a big red D on it? Vanessa's like, it's none of your business. She decides to go to Denise's room because, none of her sweaters look right. And she knocks on the door and there's no one responding. And before I continue on, I don't know if you noticed that in this scene, Denise's room is like slightly curved compared to any of the other episodes where it's just like, it's straight like the other parents' door. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, why did they do that? I swear they keep changing the upstairs hallway room situation for every episode, and I don't like that because in normal houses we don't change the angles of our walls. It's not the thing. And I feel like in this case, the director Jay, I have a feeling they did this because of the whole fight scene that happens in this episode. But it's like, dude, I don't know. We're gonna check it out in the next couple episodes if it's still slightly curved like that again, or if it was just for this episode because for the camera angles in terms of, catching the moment with Rudy on the ground listening. So Vanessa calls for Denise and she's not responding, and we find out she's not in the room. So Vanessa sneaks in and grabs that sweater. And we end Act 1 and we go into Act 2. Vanessa and Robert come back from the dance and Robert is about to give her a kiss, but Denise interrupts. And Denise wants to talk to Vanessa because, she knows that sweater is gone and Vanessa's wearing it. And Vanessa's like, can we talk about this later? And Denise is like, there's a sweater missing from my closet and I want to know who has it. And Vanessa is like, the way she responds is she's like surprised. She's like, really? And so she tells Vanessa tells Robert to wait in the kitchen and fix himself a snack. So he does that. And Vanessa tells Denise, like, he was about to kiss me goodnight, and you ruined that. And Denise was like, why don't you take off your coat off? Like, you're in the house. And Vanessa was like, I'm cold, but you're in the house, and eventually you're going to be taking it off. And Vanessa starts walking all the way upstairs, and Denise follows her behind. And Denise says, like, she needs to take off her coat off, or else she's going to take it off for her. And Vanessa finally, she opens her coat and shows, yeah, I have your sweater, but I didn't think you were going to mind. And Denise was like, how did you think I wouldn't mind? I told you not to to wear it. It's mine. And Vanessa goes into her bedroom and Rudy's sleeping at this point. I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, who was in the house when Rudy was in the house? And I realized Denise has been home. So clearly Denise was babysitting for this Friday night. Rudy gets up and asks, like, are you fighting? And at the same time, Denise and Vanessa says, so Denise says yes, and Vanessa says no. And Rudy asks, like, what's the fight about? And Denise says, she's wearing my sweater. And Rudy's like, I like it. She's so innocent. I love her. Keisha. I just love her. Denise says that she wants the sweater in her closet in 1 minute. And she's like, I mean it. And she pokes Vanessa in the shoulder. Claire and Cliff are back from the movies. And Cliff asks, like, what happened in the movie? Because we find out he fell asleep. And so Claire is just not happy. First of all, I was looking, I'm sorry, I got distracted with all these outfits today on this episode. Claire's jacket I like, but I would not wear it. It's too pink, it's too out there for me, but I like her jackets. I just wanted to point that out. And so Cliff, talks about, he had a big popcorn and a big soda, and he was ready for the movie, and he watched 2 minutes of it, and he saw two men speaking in French, and he had to read the subtitles. And then he saw a bicycle go by at the end of the movie, and so Cliff asked, like, what was the movie about? And Claire was like, well, the cafe was different from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. To start off, that was the first thing. There was a lot that happened in between. And Cliff was like, really? Because there was nothing happening when I was awake. And Cliff says, what happened in the movie? Like you said, there was a lot of symbolism. And Claire was like, yeah, the bike was a symbolism of freedom. And Cliff was like, no one was on the bike though. And so Claire says, the two men, one of them works in a factory, the other guy who has the hat, the guy that wears the hat, they both were in love with the same woman. And Cliff was like, there was a woman in the movie? And Claire says, yeah, there was a woman in the movie. Oh, and she was gorgeous, very gorgeous, And she wore a summer dress. And Cliff was like, why didn't you wake me up? And Claire was like, she's not your type. Love her. And so woman couldn't decide which guy she wanted, so she dropped them both. And Cliff was like, I would too, because all they did was smoke cigarettes and drink. But wasn't that the trend in Paris though? Because it seems like this movie was made in Paris, because we find out that the movie, they were speaking French. But wasn't that the trend? Even the women were doing that. So I don't know why Cliff is saying, like, I wouldn't too, because they're smoking cigarettes and drinking, because I think that was the thing in Paris, even to this day. And so Claire says, it was a beautiful, touching love story. And Cliff says, also, when I woke up, my popcorn was missing. And also my soda was gone. And so he's blaming it on Claire for finishing all that. And he asks, who took that? Was it the man on the bike? Oh, that was too funny. And we cut to Denise's room, and she's using a typewriter. I'm like, damn, those are, I guess, the good old days. I've never used a typewriter, but I feel like I would have a hard time, because I make so many mistakes when I type. Like, even when I'm using Microsoft Word, I've made like 10 mistakes within a sentence, and then have to go back. Like, with a typewriter, you can't like go back and remove whatever the word that you typed. So that's the hard days, I feel like. Thank God for Microsoft Word now, or any of the other programs that we type in, because I don't know, like throughout my high school or even elementary school and university, I was able to use Microsoft Word to help me do my reports and all that stuff. So those were the old days, So Vanessa comes into her room, and Vanessa says she wants to take, she's not taking off the sweater until Denise apologizes for poking her in the shoulder. And Vanessa's like, no. And so then Vanessa pokes Denise and says, okay, we're even. And Denise was like, we're not even. You're still wearing my sweater. And so then, like, Denise pokes at her, they poke at each other, and finally Denise pushes her on the bed, and they start fighting like crazy. And we see Rudy is outside of the door listening to this whole fight that's happening. And Cliff and Claire come, and Cliff was like, what's going on? And Rudy's like, fight, fight. And they go to inside the room, and Cliff tries to stop the fight, but they take him out, and he literally falls to the ground. I feel like that's such a disrespect to their father. You should never do that to your own father. And Rudy tries to stop it by saying, stop it! And they stop for a second, but then they go fight again. And finally, Claire is the one who, because she is the boss of the family. We know that. Claire Huxtable is the boss, not Cliff. Okay, we got to get that straight. And so Claire asks if Cliff was all right, because they took him out. And so Claire tells Rudy to go wait in her room. And Rudy was like, do I have to? And Claire was like, yes, you have to. So she leaves. And Claire asks, what's going on? And they both talk at the same time. And so she's like, stop, guys. Denise first. And Vanessa's like, why Denise? And Claire was like, because I said so. And Denise talks about how, she took my sweater. When I told her not to take it. And then they started fighting. They start fighting again, and finally Claire was like, stop, guys. And Claire asks, is that true? And Vanessa's about to say something. And before I continue on with this, I did notice when Cliff is about to interrupt Vanessa with what she just said, I noticed there was a Temple University logo thing, sticker kind of thing in the room. I'm like, damn, none of these kids ever end up going to Temple University. So I don't know why that's everywhere. I don't know if Bill Cosby got endorsed to put Temple University so people can end up going there. I don't know. It just seems so out of place with when we find out later on in the series where majority of these kids went to for school. But I also noticed that there was a photo of a black couple. And if you remember in the last season, that the photo that was there originally was a photo of a woman running in a race. So I'm not sure why that has changed, because no matter what, it was Denise's room at both times. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And so then, so Cliff interrupts Vanessa when she's trying to say it's not true, and says, I just want to let you know that you are wearing the evidence. And she was like, oh, yeah, I'm wearing the sweater. And so Claire says, we have rules in this house. We don't take things that don't belong to us, and you don't kill each other. And Denise says, so she tells Denise that she can't drive her car for 2 days, and tells Vanessa she can't be on the phone for 2 days. And Cliff says, and also you have to wear the same clothes for 2 days in a row. And Vanessa's like, what? And Claire tells Vanessa to give the sweater back to Denise. And she throws it, and Claire was like, okay, nicely and gently. And so she takes the sweater and gives it her nicely and gently. Denise was like, oh, I need to get this sweater clean now. And so Claire says the money will be taken out of Vanessa's allowance. And so Cliff gets up, and he looks into Denise's closet while she puts the sweater back in the closet. And he noticed that there's a shirt that said Morgan State. It must be is it a school? I'm not sure. But he's like, wait a minute, this is my shirt. And Denise was like, yeah, I was borrowing it. I just forgot to give it back. And Cliff was like, we gotta talk about borrowing, because I never borrowed it too. And then he also found his belts. She was like, oh, well, you never wear these belts. And Cliff was like, well, because they're never in my closet. It's just, so he tells Claire, you probably should check her closet out. There might be things that belong to you. And Claire was like, well, I know that anything that belongs to me in her closet will be returned to me by the end of this evening. And so Claire asked Vanessa to go talk to her in her room. And Cliff says the same things to Denise. Whatever belongs to me goes into my closet, just what Claire says. And he even checks her drawers to see if there's anything of his. And so we go into Vanessa's room, and Claire asks what is going on with her. She's never seen her behave like this. And Vanessa was like, yeah, well, we fought over clothes before. And Cliff was like, not to the death. And Vanessa says, she needed the sweater, and Claire was like, why? And she says because her friend was wearing the red skirt and she couldn't wear her skirt, so she had to wear her green stretch pants, which, by the way, to this day is probably not in style anymore, because I didn't really like the outfit. I'm not even a fashionista person, but I definitely know I would not wear what she was wearing. And so she's like, yeah, so she had to wear the green stretch pants, which means she couldn't wear her blue sweater. And Denise's sweater was the only sweater that she could go with this outfit. And she says, and Robert loved the sweater. And Cliff was just like, what the heck is she talking about? Because he clearly doesn't know fashion, right? That's the case. And so then Claire tells Vanessa, what you did was wrong. And Vanessa was like, I know, and it won't happen again. And Cliff finds these socks that are in one of Vanessa's shoes, and was like, these are my socks. And Vanessa was like, well, I got that from Sandra. So basically what's happening is that everyone is sharing clothes. And I think that's a normal way of a family. I've worn my mom's clothes. I've worn, my friend's clothes. I literally went to my first red carpet experience. I wore my best friend's outfit because the outfit that I had was not, I couldn't wear it at all for some reason that night. I can't remember the reason, but I ended up wearing my friend's outfit for this red carpet or for a movie screening that I went to. So the people just always share clothes. That's just the life, and that's what's the life of a family. You share things together. And so then they're about to leave, and Vanessa's like, I have to show you something. And Cliff was like, my tuxedo. I was just like, that was so funny. And she's, well, of course not. It's not his tuxedo. And first of all, why would she wear your tuxedo? That doesn't make sense. And it's her history paper. And they see the paper, and they both get not happy. They're not happy with it. How can you have a D? And she's like, I don't even know how this happened. I studied very hard. Me and Robert studied very hard. And Cliff laughs. He's like, yeah, right. They don't. All they do is gaze into each other's eyes. And so Cliff said, I think we should call Robert and talk about this. And Vanessa was like, he's in the kitchen. And they both were like, what? And she said, well, I told him to wait in the kitchen for me. And so they were like, okay, let's go to the kitchen. So they go to the kitchen, and we see Robert is eating his milk and cookies. Great choice of snack. I like that choice. I probably will end up getting a cookie after this recording of this podcast. But Cliff talks to them and asks Robert, what did he get on his recent history test? And he said a D+. So it's a bit better, but not good. And Cliff says he seems that I see books when you're studying, but you're not really studying. You guys look at each other's eyes, and basically what you guys are doing is socializing. And Claire points out, I would love to gaze into Cliff's eyes, but I can't because I have to work, my husband has to work, and we have bills to pay and allowances to pay. And Cliff says that they need to take a break from studying, and Vanessa's like, no, I don't want to. And Cliff was like, yeah, you're not studying together. And Robert was like, well, okay, it's fine. I'm grounded for the next 3 days. And Cliff was like, okay, well, after your groundation, wait, I forgot how he said groundation. I think that's how he said it, but I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Which is, I don't know if that's the actual word. Then they can prove to Cliff and Claire if they can study together. And they were like, yeah, we can. And Robert was like, yeah, we're, me and Vanessa are like the pencil and eraser. We can accomplish anything together. And Cliff was starts laughing. He's like, so does that mean me and Claire are the pen and the ink? And Claire was like, let's go take Robert home with Vanessa. And so they get up ready to go to leave the house, and Theo comes into the kitchen, and Cliff points out that the pen and the eraser are taking the pencil home. And Theo's like, huh? What? He doesn't understand. And so Claire goes into the living room, and so is Vanessa and Robert. And all of a sudden, the TV is on, and Rudy's watching TV, and she is watching the I Have a Dream. Why am I messing this up? I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. And all of a sudden, they just stop and start watching it. And all of a sudden, Theo comes in and Cliff comes in, and then Denise comes down and watches, and finally Vanessa goes to Denise, and she doesn't say this verbally loudly, but like, you know, I can't do this over the podcast, but like just like mouth out the words, "I'm sorry," and Denise was like, "Yeah," and they continue watching the speech, and the episode ends. And I would just want to let you know about this whole particular scene of, you know, them watching the "I Have a Dream" speech. This episode originally aired 4 days before the first observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a U.S. federal holiday. So I didn't know that that's when the holiday started in 1986, and I believe the day is January 20th. I just want to point out that the "I Have a Dream" speech scene of this episode originally aired 4 days before the first day of the Martin Luther King Day as a U.S. federal holiday. So that means this episode came out, the first holiday was in 1986. So that was a fun fact to let you know. The guest star for this episode is Dondre Whitifield. This is actually his second credit, and as I said, there's so many people that come on the show as them being their first or second credit. They really bring a lot of new people onto the show. But before he did the Cosby Show, he did an episode of A Different Strokes. I didn't know that. I should rewatch The Different Strokes and see if he's in it. It's been so long since I've seen that show. He's also been in All My Children. He's been in a show that I hope to start watching soon. It seems like it's a show similar to Girlfriends called Between Brothers. He's also been in Girlfriends, and he's recently been in Queen Sugar. And he actually has a book out that came out, I think, last year called Male versus Man. So maybe check that out if you're interested in his book. I saw him do a lot of press for that. It seems like it's a good book. I hope to one day it'll be in the library so I can read the book and let you know. So check that out. And I just want another fun fact is, which is so weird to find this out, is Dondre is 1 year older than Malcolm, but he is playing Tempest's boyfriend. And so Dondre and Tempest's age gap is 4 years. Isn't that crazy? And I feel like 4 years back then is such a big age gap. Like if you think about it, nowadays when you're much older, like once you're in your 20s and older, 4 years is like nothing. But like when you're in high school and elementary school, like, and you remember the episode of Denise's friend where she's like, "I'm only with Robert and he's 12 years old," but really he's if he's 4 years older than her, he would have been 16, which is basically close to 17, which is the whole situation of the hypothetical situation that happened to Denise's friend. Crazy to think about that. So just letting you know on that. And the lesson for this episode is that there are way bigger issues in the world than what your outfit looks like. I feel like that's the lesson. It's, as I said, dealing with watching the speech that Martin Luther King gave about trying to be equal, with equal with white people, black people, Asian, all kinds of races. I feel like that is that's more of a bigger issue than what outfit you wear to a dance. And the question I have for you guys is, have you ever stolen your friends or family members' clothes? Let me know. I would love to hear your stories. For me, as I said, I've never stolen someone's clothes. I've worn my best friend's outfit for a movie, a premiere red carpet event. And so that's the only time I've worn my mom's clothes too, and my cousin's clothes, but I've never stolen. But I want to hear your stories, and if it's as crazy as what Denise and Vanessa went through. Let me know using the hashtag #badgrade at Black TV Shows Pod on Instagram and Twitter. The next episode is The Cosby Show Season 2, Episode 15, Theo and Cockroach, where we meet Carl Payne for the first time. See you all on the next one.